A man stands on dry, cracked ground, surrounded by stripped timber and the sharp smell of boiling pitch. You and I are already underwater, because you know your own mind. You know the words you have spoken behind closed doors. Back together. It is to stop keeping one foot in the promise and one foot in your own survival strategy. It is to bring the entirety of who you are into the light, without holding a single piece back for yourself. Your failures do not erase your calling. Your compromises do not cancel the covenant. The old man stays in the dust and accepts the terrifying weight of an undivided heart. But the most dangerous threat to that wholeness is not found in an ancient desert. You are sitting in a quiet room, the harsh, artificial light of a screen illuminating your face long after midnight. Your thumb scrolls through the numbers of a shrinking bank account, or the lines of a stressful work email, or the painful silence of a message that was never returned. You can feel the familiar, the heavy knot of anxiety pulling tight just beneath your ribs, radiating a cold tension into your jaw. You believe in the Creator. You sing the songs, you read the ancient texts, and you genuinely want to trust the covenants you have been given. But right now, in the suffocating quiet of your own home, you are actively building a backup plan. We are exactly like the old man in the desert. We do not usually struggle with outright, defiant rebellion against the divine. We struggle with a thoroughly fractured devotion. You know the petty resentments you harbor, the hidden fractures in your character, the times you have failed the people who trust you most. You keep one hand firmly on the altar of God, and you keep the other hand desperately gripping the steering wheel of your own life. You hedge your bets because you are terrified that if you let go completely, the universe will simply let you crash into the wall. So you divide yourself. You give God your Sunday mornings, your theological agreements, and your public prayers. But you keep your financial security, your career trajectory, and your deepest fears carefully locked in a separate vault where you remain in absolute control. This is exactly what the ancient Hebrew text is diagnosing when it demands that we be TAMIM. The exhaustion you carry is not a symptom of a busy schedule. It is the agonizing friction of a divided allegiance. You are trying to live as a splintered human being. You are attempting to bring a fractured offering to a fire that was designed to consume the whole thing. And this split posture is precisely what makes modern spiritual life feel so incredibly heavy, so entirely devoid of actual joy. You are constantly managing the exhausting distance between what you claim to believe in public and what you are frantically trying to control in the dark. To be TAMIM in the modern world is to slowly unclench your fingers. It is the terrifying, beautiful process of pulling all your scattered, anxious pieces back into a single, unified center. It means taking the career, the bank account, the broken relationship, and the midnight panic, and dragging them all up the dusty steps. If the price of a ticket on the ark is absolute moral perfection, the human race ends in Genesis, to the exact same bronze altar. It is the realization that God does not want the curated, polite, religious fraction of your personality. He wants the whole, messy, terrified reality of who you actually are. But this kind of profound wholeness is not built on a pristine record of success. If you think an undivided heart requires a lifetime of perfect decisions, you will inevitably hide your worst failures from the light. To see what TAMIM actually looks like after a catastrophic moral collapse, you have to look at the life of Israel's greatest king. A king walks on a flat stone roof. The evening air is cooling. The sounds of the ancient city drift upward in the twilight. A woman bathes in a courtyard below. A command is given. A servant is sent. The king crosses a line he can never uncross. Days pass. Panic sets in. A letter is hurriedly written on a piece of parchment. The royal seal is pressed hard into hot wax. A loyal soldier carries his own death warrant to the front lines. An arrow strikes. The soldier falls in the dirt. David, the shepherd king, shatters the law. He steals a wife. He murders a friend. He lies to a nation. If the modern courtroom standard holds, His legacy is over. If the ledger demands perfection, David is damned. The earth in Noah's day is filled with violence. The Hebrew word used is hamas. It means cruelty, false oaths, a society completely devoid of empathy. He is morally bankrupt. He is a criminal wearing a crown. But history turns a strange corner, generations later. The Book of 1 Kings delivers a shocking verdict. It evaluates David's son, Solomon. Solomon builds the grand temple. He offers thousands of sacrifices. The gold of his palace blinds the eye. The heavy smoke of his incense fills the sky. But Solomon's heart is violently split. He marries foreign wives. He builds altars to other gods on the surrounding hillsides. He keeps one hand on Yahweh and the other hand tightly gripping political alliances. And the text drops a devastating comparison. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4. It says, Solomon's heart was not TAMIM like the heart of his father David. Read that again. The architect of the temple is rejected. The murderer is held up as the standard of a complete heart. How is that possible? Because of what happens in the aftermath of the ruin. A prophet walks into the palace. He points a finger at the king's chest. He says 4 words, "You are the man." The silence in the room is heavy. The air is entirely still. David does not build a defense. He does not point to his military victories. He does not negotiate a lighter punishment. You can hear the cries of the vulnerable being crushed. The ground itself is soaked in blood. The world is tearing itself apart. The king of Israel falls to the floor. He breaks. He writes the desperate words of Psalm 51. He brings his shattered, bloody, guilty pieces directly back to the Creator. He does not run. He does not hide. Solomon performs beautifully in public, but his allegiance is secretly divided. David fails catastrophically in public, but his allegiance remains singular. When David sins, he does not flee the tabernacle. He crashes into it. TAMIM is not an unbroken streak of flawless behavior. It is the immediate, desperate return to the altar. God prefers a ruined man who gives him everything, over a polished king who gives him a fraction. But this ancient contrast forces a massive reckoning for exactly what you must do the next time you fail. We are a species intimately haunted by the fear of being found out. You can see it in how we construct our public personas, in how we carefully edit our conversations, and in how we frantically backpedal when someone catches us in a contradiction. We are fundamentally convinced that love, acceptance, and proximity to the divine are tied strictly to our performance. If we perform well, we are welcomed into the courtyard. If we drop the ball, we are abandoned outside the gates. And in the middle of this deafening chaos, God points to a man covered in sawdust and calls him blameless. We take this deeply flawed, exhausting human economy, and we project it directly onto the God of the universe. We build our entire modern religious scaffolding on the idea that righteousness is earned through a rigorous, anxiety-inducing avoidance of mistakes. The ancient Hebrew text operates on a completely different frequency. But here is the part I keep coming back to: the sheer, terrifying vulnerability of the bronze altar. The worshiper in Leviticus could not hide a sick animal in the back of the herd. They had to pull it up the dusty steps. They had to hand over the rough rope. They had to stand in the loud, smoke-filled courtyard, smelling the burning wood and the sharp copper tang of blood, and watch the priest inspect every single inch of the offering. There was no hiding in the dark. There was only the brutal, beautiful honesty of bringing exactly what you had into the light. The altar is not a display case for the flawless. It is a fire for the fractured. If you are in a season where your spiritual life feels like a suffocating performance, you need to hear what this ancient word is actually asking of you. If you are tired of managing the exhausting distance between the person you pretend to be on Sunday morning and the person who stares back at you, but here's the detail that disrupts everything. This same man will later survive the flood. Step off the boat. Plant a vineyard in the mirror at night. TAMIM is your way out. God is not waiting for you to scrub your ledger clean. He is waiting for you to bring him the broken pieces. He knows your history. He knows the bitter words you have spoken in anger, the corners you have cut in secret, and the promises you have broken to the people who trust you most. He is not shocked by your humanity. He is not standing behind a heavy wooden bench waiting to drop a gavel on your failures. He is standing at the altar, asking you to stop holding a fraction of yourself back in the shadows. To be TAMIM is to take the chronic anxiety, the secret addictions, the shattered relationships, and the massive, humiliating mistakes, and bring all of them to the exact same place. It is to kneel in the dirt, feeling the heat of the fire on your face, and hand over the entirety of your life. Your failures do not erase your name. Your fractures do not cancel your calling. When you finally stop dividing your allegiance between your own desperate damage control and the mercy of God, you experience the profound, breathtaking relief of wholeness. But to truly feel the weight of what happens when a human being does this, you have to step back, get blindingly drunk, and pass out naked in his tent in a moment of catastrophic family shame. He is not flawless. And look at the entire scope of the story. Because when you trace this one word across centuries of history, a massive, undeniable pattern emerges. And it changes how you see every single thing God has ever done. A man builds an ark in a violently fractured world, and an undivided obedience saves the human race. A priest inspects a fragile ram in the tabernacle dust, and a complete offering is welcomed by the fire. A sun stands still over an ancient valley, and an unbroken day secures a staggering victory. An old man kneels after decades of manipulation, and a splintered allegiance is called back into covenant. A wise son builds a golden temple to the heavens, and a divided devotion ends in rejection. A broken king weeps on a cold palace floor, and a catastrophic failure is met with absolute grace. A desperate human being finally lets go of the steering wheel, and a crushing burden of perfection is instantly lifted. Same ancient word. Same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the timing in the desert. He makes a terrible, humiliating mistake. So how can the text call him blameless? If you look closer at the ancient, God does not demand an undivided heart when Abram is young, optimistic, and relatively unscarred. He waits until the man is 99 years old. He waits until the patriarch has lied to save his own skin, manipulated his circumstances, and thoroughly fractured his own family. He asks for TAMIM only after the ruin. He does not demand a clean slate. He demands the whole, complicated, messy reality of the man's life. If you are in a season where you feel completely disqualified by your own history, if you are utterly exhausted from trying to scrub your ledger clean before you approach the divine, Genesis chapter 17 is a place to sit. TAMIM, wholeness, righteousness is not a spotless record. It is an undivided heart. The altar does not ask you to perform. It asks you to remain entirely present, stepping fully into the light, and holding absolutely nothing back in the shadows. And may the God who has never once demanded a flawless performance meet you in the exact center of your own brokenness and make your splintered allegiance entirely whole. If this opens something in you, subscribe, leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by the heavy burden of perfection. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. Language. At the dirt and grit of the biblical narrative, you start to see something the perfection reading completely misses. He is 6 centuries old. The sun beats down on his weathered neck. His hands are calloused from swinging an iron adze. Blameless is not an absence of mistakes. It is a completely undivided allegiance. To feel the weight of this story, you have to step out of modern theology and back into the ancient dirt of the Old Testament. You have to look at the Hebrew word sitting right beneath our English translations, because that single word will dictate whether you spend your life utterly exhausted, constantly trying to scrub your record clean, or whether you finally understand what the Creator has actually been asking for since the beginning. The place to start is not with Noah's Ark. To understand what this word really demands of a human being, you have to look at a priest holding a sharp bronze knife, standing next to a bronze altar covered in fresh blood. The English word blameless is a courtroom word. It carries the cold, sterile weight of a legal proceeding. We are a species intimately acquainted with guilt, constantly terrified of being found out. And we naturally project that terror onto the biblical text. When we read a translation that demands we be blameless, our modern minds immediately conjure a harsh, fluorescent spotlight. You picture a towering judge behind a heavy wooden bench. You feel the cold sweat of a defendant. The air around him is thick with the scent of resin and sweat. And the mocking laughter of his neighbors echoes in the valley, waiting for the evidence to be unsealed. You imagine a jury meticulously scanning a ledger of your life, searching for a single smudge, a single error, a single reason to pronounce a guilty verdict. This is the crushing standard we have inherited. We assume the divine is a cosmic auditor, checking our spiritual math, waiting for us to drop a decimal point so he can reject the entire page. The psychological toll of this misunderstanding is absolute exhaustion. If you believe the creator of the universe requires a flawless track record, your spiritual life becomes nothing more than a desperate exercise in damage control. You never actually draw near to him. You only manage your distance. You hide your failures. You suppress your darkest thoughts. And you perform a carefully curated version of righteousness, hoping the light never catches the cracks in your foundation. This is not devotion. It is anxiety disguised as religion. But this legalistic framework is completely foreign to the ancient authors of the Hebrew Scriptures. The writers of Genesis did not possess our modern obsession with sterile courtrooms, flawless ledgers, and technical acquittals. Their entire vocabulary of righteousness was shaped by something far more visceral, far more messy, and far more physical. To the ancient Israelite mind, the standard of measurement was not a gavel. It was an altar. When an ancient Hebrew heard the word used to describe Noah, they did not think of a pristine moral scorecard. They thought of a farmer walking up the dusty, sun-baked steps of a tabernacle courtyard. Pulling a young animal, he is building a massive wooden box for the end of the world. Genesis chapter 6 introduces this man, Noah, with 3 distinct labels, by a rough rope. They thought of the sharp, metallic tang of blood in the air, the heavy heat of a fire radiating against their skin, and a priest stepping forward to evaluate an offering. We have taken a word born in the dirt and smoke of ancient worship and trapped it in the terminology of modern law, and in doing so, we have lost the very thing it was trying to tell us. To recover the truth, we have to look closely at what exactly that priest was searching for when the farmer finally reached the top of those steps. The desert sun is blinding. The sand burns through thin leather sandals. A worshiper walks into the tabernacle courtyard. He pulls a young ram by a rough cord. The noise is deafening. Sheep are bleating. Bulls shift their weight in the dirt. Fire crackles on a massive bronze grate. The air is heavy, thick with the smell of roasting meat, burning wood, and the sharp copper scent of fresh blood. A priest steps forward. His white linen tunic is stained red at the hem. He stops the worshiper. He kneels in the dust next to the animal. The priest does not ask the man about his secret thoughts. He does not review a moral ledger. He simply begins to inspect the offering. He checks the hooves. They must not be crushed. He checks the eyes. They must not be blind. He is a righteous man. He walks with God. And then there is the third label. It is a word that has haunted readers for thousands of years. He checks the skin. It must not be diseased. He checks the bones. They must not be broken. In Leviticus chapter 1, verse 3, the text establishes the absolute baseline requirement for any sacrifice brought before the fire. Moses writes the instruction clearly. If a man brings a burnt offering from the herd, he must present a male without blemish. In English, without blemish sounds like an impossible standard. It sounds like a pristine, glowing state of absolute perfection. We read it through our modern courtroom lenses and assume God is demanding something flawless. But the priest kneeling in the dust is not looking for a flawless moral record. He is checking for physical completeness. The requirement is not a lack of mistakes. It is a lack of division. The animal cannot be missing a leg. It cannot be blind in one eye. It cannot be fractured. It cannot be half sick and half healthy. It must be entirely intact. If you are going to bring an offering to the Creator of the universe, you cannot bring him a divided thing. You must bring the whole thing. All of it goes on the altar. None of it gets left behind in the field. The animal is whole. It is undivided. And this is where the linguistic bridge changes how you read the rest of the Hebrew Bible. The text says, Noah was blameless in his generation. Most people read that word and feel an immediate, crushing weight, because when the priest stands up, wipes the dust from his knees, and pronounces the ram acceptable for the fire, he uses a very specific ancient word. It is a word that connects the blood-stained earth of the tabernacle directly to a man swinging an adze in Genesis chapter 6. The priest looks at the animal, wipes the blood from his hands, and declares it fit for the fire. And when he does, the ancient terminology he uses is the exact same word Moses uses to describe a man building a boat in Genesis chapter 6. The word translated as without blemish at the bronze altar, and translated as blameless in the flood story, is the Hebrew TAMIM. It appears nearly 100 times in the Old Testament, and its range of meaning shatters our modern courtroom anxieties. The word TAMIM comes from the root verb tamam, which means to be complete, to be whole, or to be finished. Its primary, literal function has absolutely nothing to do with a pristine moral scorecard. It means something that is undivided. A sacrificial animal is tamim because it is entirely present in the courtyard. There are no missing limbs. There are no fractured bones. The entirety of the creature is offered up. If realizing that the Bible is not asking you for a flawless performance in their chest, blameless, flawless, sinless, a moral record so perfectly spotless that no accusation can stick to it, is stirring up a sense of relief you have never felt before. You're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the meaning of this ancient word shifts from the physical body of a sheep to the internal posture of a human being. You can see the breadth of this word in Joshua chapter 10. The text describes a sweeping, cosmic miracle, where the sun stands still in the sky over the valley of Ajalon for a full, extraordinary day. The Hebrew literally says the sun was tamim. It was complete. It was a whole day, a solid block of time, unbroken by the sudden arrival of darkness. It did not waver. That root changes everything about how we read the story of Noah, and how we read God's expectations of us. When God points to Noah and calls him Tamim, he is not auditing a ledger and finding zero mistakes. He is looking at a man surrounded by a violently fractured society, a man who will later get blindingly drunk and embarrass his family, and he is diagnosing his core allegiance. Tamim is not a standard of flawlessness. We look at the story and assume God looked down at a violently wicked earth, scanned the human race, found the one guy who never made a mistake. It is a demand for wholeness. God is not looking for a spotless record. He is looking for an undivided heart. He wants a human being who is entirely present, facing him, not split down the middle by competing loyalties. Noah is a man who brings his whole, messy, imperfect self to the Creator, without holding a piece back for the corruption of the world. But Noah is only the introduction to this concept. The true, heavy weight of this word arrives centuries later, and it lands squarely on the shoulders of an old man kneeling in the desert dirt. A 99-year-old man falls face down in the dirt. The desert wind pulls at the heavy goat hair fabric of his tent. His knees press hard into the jagged stones. His mouth tastes like dry grit and decades of unfulfilled promises. He is Abram. He has been following a voice for 24 years, and he has failed, repeatedly, to trust it. He has lied to a pharaoh to save his own skin. He has endangered his wife to secure his own safety. He has listened to the anxiety of his household over the promise of the sky. He has taken a servant girl into his bed to force a miracle his own way. He has fractured his family, and decided to hand him the blueprints for survival. We read Blameless as a demand for perfection. And if that is the case, he has broken his own home. If the standard of the Almighty is moral perfection, this man is utterly disqualified. If the Creator requires a spotless ledger, the story of Israel dies right here in the sand. And yet, God speaks. Genesis chapter 17, verse 1. The silence of 13 years is finally broken. God appears and says to Abram, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me, and be TAMIM, be blameless." Look at the staggering timing of this command. God does not demand this at the beginning of the journey in Haran. He does not ask for it when Abram is young and relatively unscarred. He asks for it after the failure. He asks for it after the devastating compromise with Hagar. He asks for it when Abram's heart is thoroughly splintered by his own desperate attempts to control his future. The timing is everything. The command is not an audit of his past. It is a diagnosis of his present. God is looking at a man who has spent 24 years hedging his bets. Abram believes God, but he also keeps a backup plan in his back pocket. He trusts the covenant, but he also trusts his own manipulation. His allegiance is violently split, and God says, "Be TAMIM, bring the whole offering to the altar." To walk before God and be TAMIM is to pull all the scattered, anxious, manipulative pieces of yourself